I just said that, as acceptable collateral. You have industry-led programs and schemes. And then I mentioned that we take a value chain approach to financing to promote access to markets and end users. So these are some of the benefits of CBN loans. Now, what are the challenges that CBN has faced with regard to achieving our objectives with our interventions? On the left-hand side, I'm going to talk about some of the challenges that are sort of within the control of the CBN. And on the right-hand side, some challenges that might require a multi-stakeholder approach to addressing. So on the left-hand side, there's an apathy of banks to participate. My colleague, when she talked about why we intervene, she said there's an apathy of banks to participate. And this is still a challenge because of the very low interest rates. Banks might have a propensity to want to rather finance the traditional at their own high interest rates. So we use certain tools, moral suasion and so on and so forth, to sort of ensure that they lend to these critical sectors. There's low financial literacy. That's why we engage on financial literacy drives to ensure that the people that need access to this information have the information that they need. Financial inclusion, I talked about the excluded sectors like the North, the youth, MSMEs, rural dwellers, and women. So this is very important. The collateral requirements we have addressed to a certain extent with the National Collateral Registry. And then on the other side, you have access to markets. So there are some structural bottlenecks, especially, for example, when it comes to exports. When it comes to exports, you produce, take it to the port, time to export, so much documentation requirements before you can export it. That produce might go off, it might go bad before you even get there. These are some issues that require a multi-stakeholder approach. Infrastructure dearth also relates to access to markets. Insecurity, so some farmers have not been able to go back to their farms due to farmers' headers crisis and some other insecurity issues. Also, there is insincerity of some applicants. So there are some people we term intentional loan defaulters. That is, you take the loan knowing fully well that you have no intention of repaying the loan. This is a big issue. Sociocultural issues, talking about some places women are not allowed to own land. How do they present this as collateral? So many issues. Acceptability of central bank digital currency. So we might have heard about the recently introduced e-Naira. E-Naira is supposed to have gone a long way to help provide a channel through which our interventions can be spread, but it's lagging in acceptability. So these are some of the challenges that we have faced with ensuring that we achieve the objectives. So in a nutshell, for more information, you can visit the bank's website, www.cbn.gov.ng. Under the tab Development Finance, you will see information on our activities, commodity surveillance, microfinance, some of our schemes. If you want to participate under any of the schemes, you can do a web search and you will get the information that you require. At this point, we have come to the end of the presentation. Thank you very much. You can have questions.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ayagogo and Ms. Bondi. That's a very powerful presentation, very exhaustive. At this point, I'm sure that most of the participants may not really have questions, just a few clarifications here and there. So we are going to invite participants to now ask their questions. If you want to ask a question, all you need to do is to raise your hand. We'll see you, and then we invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question. So we'll take it one person at a time. Once your hand is up, we're going to invite you to unmute yourself and ask your question, after which you mute back. Okay, so we'll take, we can see Mirabel. Mirabel,
Yes,
you can
good
unmute yourself.
afternoon. Yes, I have. Good afternoon, sir. Yes.
Good afternoon.
So I
Sorry,
joined this web. Yes, I joined this webinar for this Hello. Sorry, sir. Can you hear me now?
we can hear you. We can hear you now.
Yes, so my facility, Sonabel Medical Center, we had started up the application process for the CBN loan about 2 years now, and we've still not had access to the loan. There have been a lot of going back and forth in the process, and I think the bank that's helping us with the process is Union Bank. Yes, so which I just want to know exactly what processes I have to go through and what other steps I have to take to have access to these loans, because we've met all the requirements. We've made we've provided all the collateral that they needed, all the properties, all the documents needed to secure the loan, but we still not had access to this loan.
Thank you so much for that question. I'm sure the resource persons will address it. So you can mute yourself now.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mirabel, for that question. First of all, I want to know what level of engagement have you gone to with your bank to actually find out what exactly is the issue? If you've met the documentation requirements and everything, has the application been forwarded to the CBN, or is there something else going on? Because ordinarily it should have been sent to the CBN for a second level evaluation and a review.
Also, what loan did you apply for?
Yeah.
You didn't specify.
Is it the healthcare sector intervention facility? You mentioned a hospital.
Okay. We'll take the next questions from Ejeremwa David. Ikechi. Ejeremwa, you can unmute yourself now. Ejeremwa, you have been invited to unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone.
Yes, we can hear you. Go ahead and ask your question.
What role does the National Bank play in assisting their customers to access this loan? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Please mute yourself.
Thank you, Mr. Ejerenwa. So the National Microfinance Bank are one of the partnering financial institutions, and they're actually the implementing institution for some of our loans, such as Agribusiness Small and Medium Enterprise Intervention Scheme, AGSMIS, and the Targeted Credit Facility. Now, AGSMIS, NESAL was established, NESAL PLC was established with an overall purpose of de-risking lending to the agricultural sector. And they operate through 5 pillars, talking about insurance, talking about technical assistance, and so on and so forth. So that's the role they play, really sort of, they are the managing agent for the AGSMIS and TCF. That's the role they play.
Thank you so much. We'll take the next question from Omolayo. Omolayo's hand has been up, so let's invite him. Omolayo, you are being invited to unmute yourself.
Good day, sir.
Yes,
Good day, sir.
can hear you.
Yes, sir. My name is Omolayo from Calabar. Please, sir, I have a few questions, most especially based on SME issue. Because most of what CBN is saying is that I have a typical example, like my wife. They have been trying to import a machine from China, which she has done the form, did everything. But where she is having a challenge is the issue of FX. And she applied to through CBN. But the commercial bank she used have been frustrating her efforts since like 1st of April. It can't get FX for her. In a typical Nigeria, if you have a genuine business you want to do, and it's not that he's using loan, he's using our own money, close to 20 million. Still, they can't get FX for her to import that machine. What CBN is doing to help? I know it can't applicable to all my wife, and there will be a lot of customers like that. What CBN is doing to help them out?
Okay, thank you. Please, you can mute yourself now, Omolayo. Clearly, your question is outside the presentation that has just been made. Your question is directed to inability to access FX for imports. That's a different thing altogether from what has been presented here today. So we'll take questions strictly based on the presentations that have been made. Now we're going to invite John Bassi. John Bassi, please, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much. I work for a small farm rather, and we wanted to take advantage of the anchor borrower scheme. And we were told we have to do application through a more bigger farm who is well known and has the capital base. So we applied through that bigger farm, and the farm, I think, through the performing financial institutions, because we were not banking with Zenith, so we had to pass through Zenith. My question
May we know
is
the name of this farm, this big farm?
Pizewima. My question is, who is the anchor borrower? Is it the bigger farm we are passing through, or the performing, the participating financial institutions? Because we were made to understand that we are supposed to pass through an anchor borrower who is Wima rather. But by the explanation there, I was told that we could have done it directly with a participating financial institution. That is one. And second, let's be fair to ourselves. There is also corporate espionage. How does CBN check these smaller farms, like in my case, who is going to pass through a bigger farm? Should in case situation turns that we will not be able to repay, and the bigger farm does the repayment for us, what does CBN do to check of this unhealthy takeover? Let me just put it that way, because sometimes these terms may be brought to smaller farms with management that has little knowledge and understanding of these things. And when negotiations are done between the bigger ones, I'm talking just in my case, I don't know whether it's general, I think the two ladies there will clarify. When the negotiations are done, the terms are concluded, sometimes they are just brought to the smaller firms' table to approve and accept. And sometimes they just ended up surrendering their title documents and all that without knowing the full details of the things. Now, the bigger firm may have the capacity to manage this loan on their behalf. Why they are doing that on behalf of the smaller firm, like in my case, who may not understand these things properly and completely, and in a case they couldn't meet up, how do you central bank come in to avoid espionage, taking over based on the reasons that they cannot repay? I know it's ideal, it's formal, but sometimes do they go to the extent to explain that they ensure that the real applicant understands in details what is involved? Because while watching here, I could understand things I don't think I understand while they were explaining it on the table.
Okay, if I understand you, John Bassi, you are saying your firm is applying through a bigger firm, which is actually the anchor borrower?
Yes.
Okay, so which firm which firm is at the threat of being taken over? Is it the smaller firm or the bigger firm?
No, the smaller firm, I mean.
The smaller firm is at the threat of being taken over.
It's just, well, I hope you understand my question.
I understand your question. So
yes.
I will allow the resource persons to weigh in on this.
Yes, because this may
John
take.
Bassi,
yes.
Can you listen?
Okay.
Now, the anchor borrower in this process is the bigger firm.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Now, if you, as a smaller firm, do not trust that big firm to deal with you honestly and with integrity, why do you deal with them? In any case, I will allow the resource persons to weigh in on your question. So please mute yourself now.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. John Bassi, for your question. Fortunately, we have one of the key personnel in the ABP implementation team. He is the head of the Annual Commodities Office, and he is willing to answer your question. So I'll give way now for Mr. Benedict Agbo to unmute himself and address Mr. John Bassi's question.
Benedict Agbo, look for him. Let him unmute.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, I had some issues with an unmuting. The host had to assist with that. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you.
And thank you, ladies, for the wonderful presentation. As regards the PZ Wilma issue, I know that is oil palm. It's a long gestation commodity. And the way it is structured, like the host answered correctly, the anchor, who is the processor also, is the PZ Wilma. PZ Wilma, under the anchor borrowers program, are allowed to operate through the outgrower scheme. So his firm, who he's saying is a smaller firm, is actually part of the outgrowers that PZ Wilma can fund and offtake their FFB, that's fruit bunches, for processing. So whatever it is, they are supposed to enter into an agreement, sign an MOU with PZ Wilma that they will submit the fruit bunches. And in terms of being the obligor who is responsible to repay the loan, it is PZ Wilma. PZ Wilma has another undertaking with them that they will submit the fruit bunches. And it's only PZ Wilma that the bank will hold responsible for the repayment of the loan. So once he's assured, just like you mentioned, that the agreement is solid enough and he trusts PZ Wilma, of course they can go ahead. And I know PZ Wilma is a reputable firm under this oil palm production in the country. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bassi. So you can see that in this situation, the smaller firm has to have some element or some level of trust on the bigger firm, which is the anchor borrower. Now, the anchor borrower is to be held responsible for the repayment of the loan. And where the smaller firm is in default, then the anchor borrower has to realize on the MOU signed. That is the way it should be. Okay, now let's invite the next person, Mwali Eze. His hand has been up. Mwali Eze. Mwali Eze, please unmute yourself.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, thank you for the opportunity and for the lectures you have given us. They are quite educative. What I want to ask is, we have several interventions by the bank that there are too many for Nigerians to carry off head. And then it will be difficult for people to benefit if they don't know these programs and what they entail. I'm asking, is there no way that most of these programs that run into orders can be streamlined and reduced for more effectiveness and efficiency in their deliverables? Is there no way we can streamline these interventions? Because as we are rolling them out, there are too many. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Wally, please mute yourself now. Yes, so I will invite the resource persons to weigh in.
Going to work.
Thank you, Mr. Nwale, for your question. So in terms of advocacy, we do a lot of advocacy. I mean, we're a population of over 200 million people. Regardless of whatever channel you use, I think it's impossible to reach every single person. But we do a lot of advocacy and public awareness, such as what we're doing right now. We've gone to speak at schools, we've gone to speak at even churches, we've gone to speak at universities. So there are different fora in which we've used to create some form of awareness on our intervention programs. Now, some of the interventions are not active. We're just letting you know what has been available from 1962 till date. Some of them build off of each other. Like I told you when I was talking about the agricultural sector, the paddy aggregation scheme, the maize aggregation scheme build off of the Anchor Borrowers program. The Youth Entrepreneurship Development Program is not active, but it once existed. So I'll just let you know that these are what the things that we have done from 1962 till present date. So it is not all of them that are currently active right now.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I don't think it's information overload, or I don't think it's an overload, because you can identify the specific sector where you play into, what applies to you directly. So in the agricultural sector, we talked about the Commercial Agricultural Credit Scheme, which is more for large scale agropreneurs and agro-processors. So that might be more into what you're into. If it's for a small scale like AGSMIS, everything is tailored. We talked about tailored financial services. So everything is tailored to a certain niche, of every sector. So they're not necessarily overlapping. Everything has its own niche that it applies to.
I hope that answers.
Thank you so much. Nwale, you have heard it. You can agree with me that the Nigerian economy is quite large. And for you to be able to reach out to various economic agents, you must necessarily come up with products that will appeal to them. And that is what the CBN has done. So the bank should actually, the monetary authority should actually be commended on this call rather than talk about information overload. Okay, so let's invite Samuel Oguta to ask his question. Oguta, please unmute yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for the good presentation. So much, I appreciate it. Yeah, my question is bordered on how far has the bank CBN gone in monitoring the activities of the anchors? Like, for instance, there's this issue of central, that is smallholders' economic interests, farmers' agricultural cooperatives. So I can remember there's one my wife applied for since 2020. And then through that means, then along the line, the branded ATM was given to her. But since then, nothing has been done. And then there is getting to wet season like this as a preparation for farming and some other things. I waited to hear from all, something to be done. And not even up to now. Just something that happened last year. So the question is, how far has the CBN gone in trying to monitor and even ensure that those programs have been implemented exactly the way it is planned? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Samuel Oguta, please mute yourself now while the resource persons weigh in on your question.
Thank you so much, Mr. Host, and thank you, Mr. Samuel Oguta, for your question. I will let our very senior colleague address your concern. Thank you. Mr. Benedict Abu.
Okay, thank you so much. Yes, again, sorry for the delay. I always have to wait to be allowed to unmute. Mr. Oguta, I understand your concerns. In a country like Nigeria, when you try to bring out interventions, there are always people who try to take advantage of others who don't really have the information. That's why the ladies talked about information asymmetry. This issue you're talking about now, even as the head of the Annual Commodities Office, it has not been brought to my attention. But in terms of monitoring generally, apart from our oversight over the banks, we have M&E firms that also monitor the program across board from the beginning, even up to aggregation and final sale and repayment for the loans. So yes, if it's in terms of monitoring and evaluation, the CBN has been doing that since inception. And even from 2019 to this year, we have upped the ante in terms of M&E to be able to get a full report on all our interventions. So yes, we are monitoring, but the issue he has just brought up now, if he really wants us to look into it, let him just do us a letter with all those attachments so that we can get our people to look into it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mr. Benedict, for that very clear response. I'm sure other participants will definitely benefit from this, this feedback. Now, let's invite Ubong Ekpekong. Ubong, you have been invited to unmute yourself, please.
Okay, thank you very much. Excellent presentation from the resource persons at CBN. Please, my question is simple. I don't know, what is CBN doing to ease the process of getting these facilities? Because currently I registered, I requested for the AGSME loan since 2021 from Nezel Microfinance Bank. And then I was asked to take up a compulsory training with an EDI, which I did with Young Entrepreneurs of Nigeria. Since 2021, I took the test. After the training, I passed the test, and then I wrote a business plan and submitted. Up till now, I don't think that process is completed. On the portal, with Nezel, and I think that's that portal is managed by AGSME and Nezel Microfinance Bank. The percentage shows 100% completed because the guarantors have given the approval for the loan. But up to now, I don't just know what is wrong, that the whole stuff is not completed. So please, CBN resource persons, what CBN should, you have a lot of facilities, good, well done, but these facilities are not easily accessible by members of the public. So why do we keep on introducing more facilities that are not accessible that are not easily accessible by members of the public? It's an issue. We keep on, I hear a lot about this and that, but I have, like, I can count 10 colleagues that started this process in other facilities like you mentioned, but they've not gotten it. They just leave it. So please, CBN should do something about this. Thank you very much, this district society, for putting this up. I'm grateful.
Thank you, Ubong. Please mute yourself now. I think your question has to do with a prospective beneficiary who has gone through the long process of applying, unfortunately has not been able to get the funds. So let me allow the resource persons to weigh in.
Thank you for your question. So to address your concern, the thing about AXMIS is, like my colleague rightly said, it is a pool of funds. It's not solely CBN's balance sheet that handles that fund. It is 5% of the profit after tax of all of the domestic banks, of the commercial banks. In 2019, as of 2019, we had an outstanding of 4 million applications. And then we entered into 2020. That was a very peculiar year. There was COVID, and not a lot of banks declared profits. So you can imagine where there was a limited pool of funds and a lot of demand, because a lot of the public generally just knows about AXMIS when it comes to SME financing. But we have got sorry. So we have the MSME DF, that's a micro, small and medium enterprise development fund, which you can also take advantage of. At least that one, it's not a limited pool of funds. You can also apply for other ones. So if I don't know what you're trying to do, what business activity you're in, but there's also the creative industry financing initiative, like she said, the sci-fi. And then if it's agriculture, you can try the ABP. If it's other things, there's a real sector support facility, DCR, differentiated cash reserve requirement. So there are other ones. If the ACMIS is not coming forth because of the limited pool of funds, you can try the other ones. You can try the MSME DF. But the thing about ACMIS is there is a lot of demand and just a limited pool of funds because it is the 5% profit after tax. Now, 2020, there wasn't a lot of profits. No, that's not many banks declared profits. And then you now had the 2020 application and the 2021 application. So you can just imagine how everybody's applying for that same one, but you just have a limited pool of funds. So it's not that our interventions are not easily accessible. It's just availability of funds for the ones that are a collaboration between the CBN and the DMBs.
Thank you so much. That was a very detailed feedback. And what this shows is that given the array of interventions available, one can apply for the ones where the access will be much faster instead of staying in the queue. Okay, now let's invite the pioneer chairman of ICANN, Nsukka and District Society, Mr. Stephen Ndili. His hand has been up, so let's invite him now to ask his question.
Hello, good afternoon, beautiful ladies. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. Just a kind of a little bit suggestions from my own end. When you were talking about the challenges, you talked about financial literacy, and I became very interested. I didn't see you put more emphasis on the financial literacy. Now, people who access funds in the microfinance, these small and medium scale finances, most of them are actually they don't have records, financial records. That should have made it very easy for evaluation and monitoring of funds. And I don't know, is there anything CBN is doing to partner with the Institute on these literacy in terms of financial literacy? If there is none, I think is a direction the CBN should look towards. Then again, in terms of intervention funds that has been doled out over the years, I want to talk about rice in terms of farming. We know where we are coming from when we were into importation. Rice was less than 10,000 naira. And today rice is over 20-something thousand naira for local rice. Would you say we have made a lot of progress? Is there a time frame for Nigerians to begin to see this product becomes a little bit affordable to Nigerians? Or how do we go about it? What is there a process of evaluating people who have been assessing these loans and finding a way to improve the yield of and to meet up the demand of this product by Nigerians? Is there anything we are doing? Is there a time frame? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Chair. I will allow the resource persons to weigh in now.
Thank you so much, sir. Mr. Stephen Ndili, thank you, sir, for your question. First of all, I'm just going to throw out my thoughts out there before inviting my senior colleague to answer more technically some of your questions. First of all, you talked about financial literacy and what we're doing with that in that regard. We have a financial inclusion delivery unit, which implements the National Financial Inclusion Strategy. So they are directly involved for conducting financial literacy drives to those identified demographics that I mentioned: the North, the youth, MSMEs, urban dwellers that are particularly financially excluded and don't have access to this information. So they're responsible for that, and they've been doing an excellent job of conducting financial literacy and sensitization. So for your second question, talking about rice, I'm just going to throw it over to my senior colleague, Dr. Musa Olashupo, and he'll answer that question. Thank you.
Please, can you unmute Olashupo? Okay, I think he's on mute now. Dr. Olashupo, can you unmute yourself?
Hello, good
We
afternoon.
can hear you.
Okay, good. My name is Dr. Musa Olashupo. Also a privileged member of the Institute, membership number 23121 FCA. And it's also gladdening to tell colleagues that the bank actually has an area of professionals, I think across all departments as of today. Speaking specifically to the issue of rice production, I'll start from the basics. Prior to the introduction of the Anchor Borrowers Program, all of us will know that we actually had a plethora of imported rice in almost all the markets in Nigeria. As of today, that trend has been reversed. There's no market you see today that you don't see 90% of milled in Nigerian rice. So on the issue of availability, we have made progress. And I can also tell you for most of the imported brands you still see in the market, they're actually locally milled rice that are a bag. In those choice brands that you actually want because you have preference for imported rice. Finally, on the issue of pricing, while we say some years back, rice was cheap, pricing comes with relativity. As of today, the imported rice, the average in the market is at about 27,000 naira. You can make those surveys. Because what we also do is we track our progress on the pricing of the locally milled rice vis-a-vis the price of the imported rice. As at last week, Wednesday, the average price of the imported rice is about 27,000 naira in the south. And in the south, about 29,500. It's only in the north where you have little amount of imported rice. And that is because we have 80% of the mills or more concentrated in the north. So in terms of pricing, relatively, compared to where we are, vis-a-vis where we are today, we are not doing badly. And three things basically accounts for pricing. First is the paddy availability, which is about 70% of the total cost of production. As of today, with our intervention under the Anchor Borrowers Program, we've been able to guarantee paddy supply to a number of the mills. Of course, looking at our population, the rate of growth, and also challenges around insecurity. Also, the seasonality of the commodity, being grain, you'll see that we can't guarantee full availability all year round. Secondly, is the cost of the logistics. Fueling, for example, cost of diesel between December last year and today has gone maybe another 200-300% increase. All this transfer or translate to the actual market price. Finally, is the cost of power. Most of these mills are either connected permanently on the grid or they are providing their own source of power. So these are all the different scenarios that causes price movement. So if we can guarantee stability around the other 30%, with our consistent push in increasing productivity per hectare, which will give us more paddy, and also bringing more farmers onto the program, we'll be able to guarantee supply. We'll be able to guarantee that the prices of rice will actually go down. But outside all this, if we are still struggling with insecurity, for example, last year, we lost close to 100,000 hectares of paddy due to farmers' inability to go and harvest. So these are all the vagaries that actually accounts for pricing. And on the other side, in terms of price movement, it's not just localized to Nigeria. It's a global trend. I mean, this has been aggravated again by the unrest in Russia, the Russia-Ukraine axis, hinging more on wheat and maize. I mean, in a matter of months again, that will be translated to the happenings in the local economy. So we have a lot of things we are fighting. But the trajectory is right. We are seeing progress. And we believe that if we can sustain this growth, we will be able to guarantee supply and also ensure good pricing for Nigerians for rice and other major commodities where we are playing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear professional colleague. That was a very detailed response. Clearly, a lot of things account for the market price of the product. And I'm sure the participants.
Yeah, 6. Banking is 4.
Hello. Okay, while they try to reconnect, we'll just go ahead with the questions. Mr. or Ms. Rafi Olawi, you can go ahead with your question.
Hello? Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good afternoon. For good expository presentation there. You know, we've been really exposed to these intervention funds available. But that being said, what we have noticed that only few Nigerians are aware of these intervention funds. What is CBN doing in sensitizing the public about this availability of these funds? Secondly, the bankers are averse to informing the customers of the availability of this fund because they always think of the fact that the interest rate is low and as such is not to their advantage. So even when you approach them, they are averse to assisting you to get this fund available. I remember of a client that needed LOI to process BOI. It took a month before we could get LOI. And what I was saying was that what is in for them? And as such, they are not, they are not encouraged. So what is CBN doing to ensure that bankers are making this easy for the applicant to assess?
Okay, thank you for the question. So sorry, my network went off briefly. I'm back again. Okay, so the resource persons will weigh in on your question now. Please mute yourself back, Rafi.
Thank you, Mr. Rafi, for your question. So we try to continue with our engagement. We do a lot of continuous engagement. Like I said, this forum is one of such examples. We have the Market Square one that we do. We have universities, we speak in churches, we have a public advocacy and relationship management office. We also have programs in which we speak on through the multimedia. We have a radio program, we have a TV program, and even in the newspaper, we try to push out information in the newspaper as well as our social media. We are active on Instagram, we are active on Twitter, we are active on Facebook. I think the handle is at CBN. This CBN Abuja, Send Bank. So you can always follow information. So if you're active on the social media space, there's the Twitter and the Instagram and Facebook. If you listen to the radio, we have radio programs, TV as well, as sometimes that we do specials on TV. So we're constantly trying to push out information. But as I addressed this question earlier, I said it is impossible to address all Nigerians at the same time. I mean, it's almost, if you put in newspaper, there's people that want to read newspaper. If you put it on social media, there are people that want to rather go to gossip blogs. You put it on TV, and everybody has access to TV. So it's just, you look for the forum that is more suitable for you and look out for when we have those programs airing. And there's this other question on which one you're going to take, right?
About banks not really willing to participate due to the low interest rates and whatnot. Actually, all banks, all commercial banks are participating financial institutions under all of our interventions. So if you approach a bank and say you want to participate under so and so intervention and you have all your documentation right, they have no reason to refuse you from forwarding your application for processing. And if this is the case, you can escalate the issue. You can forward any concerns or complaints directly to the central bank. We have a consumer protection department and even directly to the development finance department, and we'll address these issues. So all commercial banks and microfinance banks are participating financial institutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. We now invite our zonal coordinator, Alhaja Titi Akibayo, FCA. Hello, Alhaja Titi. Can you unmute yourself? Yes.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for the good presentation. Even though I came late, but it has been very, very interesting. Wow. Please allow me to just quickly make this small comments on my question. Yeah. A lot of people have talked, basically finding it difficult to access the loan. I particularly even feel that we are not getting the benefit of these loans. Like my society, Society of Women Accountants of Nigeria, we tried to get the cassava, the rice loan, we couldn't. We already acquired the land and everything. In fact, our money is just there now. Some of the things that they say we should deposit by the interlink bank. But that is not the most important. The most important is I'm of the opinion that the people are not getting what they should be getting from all this loan. Although a colleague of mine during the ICANN conference confirmed that he was able to get some for his clients. That's our past president, Chidi Ajegbo. But I'm not convinced. I want to suggest, just like the Exim Bank of America, even though the Nigerian banks frustrate that too for people to get the loan. When you want to get that loan, they send you the equipment you need, the tractors and everything, and they just send you the nominal money that you need for the cash flow. Why don't you imbibe such a practice? I also remember that when Mr. Adeshino of ADB now was the Minister of Special Assistant, he distributed fertilizer to the farmers and they really got it without much ado. Why don't CBN try and do something like that? I import the equipment. We have small equipment for plowing and planting, for harvesting, that what they will do in about 2-3 weeks, they can do in 2 days. If you bring such equipment down, you give it to the people that really know who need it. We can go on community basis or whatever basis we want to establish. Then these people will get it and we'll see the benefits of this loan. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Alhaja Titi Akibayo FCA, for that recommendation. I'm sure the resource persons have heard you. The Monetary Authority, they will take your recommendation into consideration going forward in terms of designing the policies and the guidelines for these interventions. But just briefly, let me allow the resource persons to also weigh in on this suggestion.
Thank you very much, Alhaja Titilayo. Thank you for your comments and your questions. I would like to state that the CBN does not only give funds directly, we also fund equipment purchase. So under the Commercial Agricultural Credit Scheme, we talked about financing large-scale agro-processors. So talking about equipment purchasing, so it's not directly cash. We can finance equipment purchasing. We do that. And then we have so many other interventions that you can play into. So I think if you just study the area of interventions that we have under each sector, you will definitely see something that keys into what you're looking to go into.
Thank you so much. Just a very brief announcement for members of the Institute who are participating in this webinar. we request that they use the chat room to give us details, their name, their membership number, their email and phone numbers, so that we'll be able to report back to the institute in respect of their credit hour. That is very important. Just use the chat room to give us your details so that we can report back to the institute in respect of your credit hour. Thank you so much. Now we invite Oluchi Oheblem, FCA, a distinguished member of the institute, to ask a question. Oluchi, please, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, thank you very much. I don't know, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Go ahead. Yeah, thank you for the presentation. While you were speaking, okay, from the title, I saw loans and grants, but when you started speaking, I heard you laying emphasis that all money must be refunded. That means it's, let me just put it that it's more of loan that the CBN gives. I'm also aware of international agencies. For example, you said now they give grants. So, and it got me thinking, I was just wondering, and once they give these grants, they monitor these projects. Maybe, for example, let's use the issue of those strikes now. You see M&E in progress, as in these things, if you don't meet your milestones, they don't release these funds to you because it's a grant. So I just wanted to ask, is there anything the CBN, I'm not against loan, no, loan is good, but what about grants? As in, can't you give grants to people outside? Must it, as in your intervention scheme, is it only loans? That is just the question I wanted to ask.
Thank you so much. Please mute yourself. Thank you. So we allow the resource persons to weigh in now.
Thank you so much, Ms. Oluchi Ohebulam, for your question. Okay, as I rightly emphasized, the only CBN intervention that is a grant is for healthcare research and development. Now, the CBN fund operates sort of like a revolving fund. So the repayments from some of our loans have to go back to fund some other beneficiaries. That is why it's not possible, it's not sustainable to operate the CBN fund as a grant. So, but we have some grant components to critical sectors. For example, under ACMIS, we have a developmental component. Under the tertiary institutional entrepreneurship scheme, we have a grant component. So the CBN assesses these things and just looks at, okay, how far can we go? Basically, the loans are offered at very low interest rates. So it's tantamount to a grant because it's like 5% interest rate. You can't get it anywhere. 5% interest rates. I think the CBN has done a lot.
I agree completely. Thank you so much. But where one might actually raise concerns is maybe the level of repayments that are coming in. Because if the level of repayments are not encouraging, then the CBN might as well be discouraged to extend more interventions. I think that that is an aspect that one should also look at. Okay, but for now, let's invite Daniel Anyanwu. Daniel Anyanwu, your hand has been up. Please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for the wonderful presentation. My question goes this way. While the last presenter was making her presentation, she said something about the policy being of the CBN using moral suasion for banks to participate in the loan process. Why the moral suasion policy instead of the mandatory policy? Because banks may not actually want to facilitate this process. But if it's a policy of a mandatory policy, I believe this process will be so fast. Secondly, what's the turnaround time after meeting the documentation process for the loan to be disbursed? What is the turnaround time? That's my question, please.
Okay, thank you so much. Those are very important questions. Please, can you mute yourself? Those are very important questions. But during the presentation, the resource persons explained that ordinarily the deposit money banks will prefer to lend at the commercial rate rather than lend at the intervention rate. you know, and that's why there has to be some level of interaction to encourage them to lend under these schemes. But be that as it may, I think I will allow the resource persons to now address your concerns comprehensively.
Thank you, Mr. Jonathan, for helping us answer our question in some way. So you should also understand that the banks are for profit and loss. They want to make a profit. So we cannot force them to, so to say, take on a loan at a loss. Because if you compare the 5% that are taking it at, compare the 20% that they could have traditionally given it as, it's going to be a loss to them. I mean, we don't want to operate a dictatorship kind of central banking model in Nigeria. I think we already have enough, you know, situation from other ways. And the second question was on the second point.
Turnaround time.
Turnaround time. There is no specific turnaround time. It depends on when the participating financial institution carries out its due diligence. And sometimes it can take a long time because some of them will have to go visit. They will have to visit, they will have to make sure that your credentials are proper and then go through, because one of the requirements for applying for the loans is having a business proposal. They have to go through this business proposal, make sure that the financials that you have put there make sense. So this is not a one-day thing. They have to do all of that. And then when it comes to the CBN, we also have to do our own due diligence, because you cannot take the word of, oh, this bank, because how will we know that I did not connive with this bank to say, oh, this is a good candidate, this is a good applicant, fund it. So we also have to do our own due diligence, which also involves going out to, if it's a farm, we have to go and inspect the on-site monitoring to be sure that this is actually a farm. We have to do run a credit check on one of our systems. Now, there's no way to say it's a 3-day period, it's a 5-day period, it's a 10-day period. There are things that can also come up in the process. We also have other things that we have to attend to. So unfortunately, we can't give a turnaround time and say that once you submit your application at the bank, it will take 10 working days and then the money is disbursed. However, we have an internal turnaround time. Once your application has been approved by management internally, the banks have a turnaround time of 10 working days in which they have to ensure that they have released the funds to the applicant. Otherwise, they will have to return it. So we monitor. So if the due diligence is done from the PFI side and it comes to the CBN and we do our own due diligence and it's forwarded to management for the approval and the approval comes, that PFI has to disburse the money to the applicant within 10 working days. If not, they have to refund the money back to the CBN. So we can only give a turnaround time for what we can control, which is internally, but for the external parts where the PFI does its own due diligence, we can't give a turnaround time, because you also need to know that the deposit money banks and the microfinance banks and the DFIs have their other mandates. It is not only the CBN's interventions that they overlook. You have other forms of operations that they have to attend to.
Thank you so much. That's a very comprehensive feedback. Now we'll take a few more questions. We can see Onome Azi, your hand has been up. Please, we're inviting you to unmute yourself now. Onome Azi.
Okay, good afternoon. Thank you very much for this very impactful webinar. My questions goes like this. Some time ago, I tried to access the NESA online access. And what put me off was the very first information that was being asked was BVN. And I felt that may have been a cloned class scam site or something. So I don't know if it is possible to get a database of some of the correct links to some of these participating banks that one can apply online and not be thrown into a scam site or something. And then for somebody that wants to go into startup agriculture, does the person need to have a land first or a landed property? I don't know how that works. Then thirdly, there was this aspect of the commodity association. I don't know if we can have more information on that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Onome. Okay, so the resource persons will now weigh in on your questions.
Okay, so for AXMEs, they are the managing partners for two of our interventions, the Targeted Credit Facility and the Agribusiness Small and Medium Enterprise Investment Scheme, which is known as AXMEs. So you can't apply for these other ones outside of NERSAL. So that one, you have the guarantee that it is NERSAL MFB that you go to apply for it. For the other ones, you have to do the applications in the branches. So there's no online portal. We have 100 for 100 PPP, which has a portal. TIES also has its own portal. But for the other ones, you would need to go into the bank. So any other link outside of NERSAL and 100 for 100 and TIES, then you can question the credibility. The second question you had was on the commodity associations. What kind of clarity do you need on commodity associations? Is it how to participate, which ones there are? Can you throw more light on what your question is?
Onome, can you unmute yourself?
Okay, so like I am into plantain and production and beans, dried plantain flour production and beans flour production. So I have heard about these commodity associations where you can actually access the raw material. There are some farmers that are into that association and you can get direct link to them. So that's what I'm asking about. I don't know if it's clear.
Yes, it's clearer now. Thank you very much. When I did the presentation on agriculture, I mentioned that under the ABP, there are 21 focal commodities. So unfortunately, plantain is not one of our focal commodities. Beans is not a focal commodity either. But if you are participating in any of the other commodities that we finance, then you can join any of the commodity association. I mentioned rice, maize, wheat, millets, guinea corn, soya beans, sorghum, cotton, cocoa. What else do we have? Oil palm, cassava. So the list is also there in the ABP guidelines, which is why we always refer the public to go read the guidelines. So if you're going to go farm something like yam, that is not a commodity that we're financing, then unfortunately you can't participate in the ABP. You must stick to the 21 commodities and then belong to the commodity associations to be able to enjoy the benefits of the ABP. I hope that answers your question. But otherwise, sorry, just to add as well, even though we don't finance plantain, you can take advantage of the other interventions that we have in the agricultural scheme. In the agricultural sector, we have the commercial agricultural credit scheme. We also have the MSME DF, and being a woman, like my colleague mentioned, there's a 60% of the fund that is targeted at female-run businesses. So you can take advantage of the MSME DF, you can take advantage of AXMEs, you can take advantage of the RSSF DCRR, the differentiated cash reserve requirement window of the real sector support facility. So your commodities might not be financed under ABP, but it does not mean that you cannot access any of the CBN intervention funds. It means that you might have to go through another means.
Thank you so much. I think we will take just one or two more questions. Olisa Martins. Yeah, Martins, please unmute yourself.
Okay. Good afternoon, all.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Sorry, I'm just joining. I just wish I can get the presentation can be made available via my email so I can follow up.
Thank you so much, Martins. You can use the chat room and provide your email. So that will enable us to communicate to you directly. Okay, so we now invite Theophilus Ifoluwa.
Good afternoon. Afternoon, Sir Zamas.
Good afternoon, Theophilus. Please go ahead and ask your question.
Yeah, thank you. My question is, we've gone around for different grants. There are different grants. For me, as a farmer, that started around, I started doing that around 2019. But we've been paying, we've been doing everything, and we've not been seeing anything. I want to ask, are there trusted organizations one can get this from, or how do we go about what we've spent money around getting all this and we are only paying and not seeing anything from them? That's my question, sir.
I'm not sure your question is clear enough.
Okay, I'm talking about grants. I said there are many grants coming and they will call it agric grants, go around. Even there are times we will be asked to open accounts. For someone like myself, I've opened different accounts. Today go and open Union Bank, today go and open Access Bank. And at the end of everything, we won't see anything. So my question now is, are there trusted organizations that we know they are genuine, that they are real, that we can get all these things from, or that they can just guide us on how to get these grants?
Okay, if you join, assuming you joined the webinar earlier enough, your question has actually been answered, because there are, it has been stated clearly, the participating banks, the banks that handle these interventions, the deposit money banks and the approved financial institutions. The list was actually displayed. So assuming you joined the webinar earlier enough, your question would have actually been answered.
Okay, sir. Like my other partner that I requested, can I also drop my email so that maybe I can read?
You can. We'll surely
Please go
send
ahead. Use the chat room.
Okay, yeah, thank you.
But hello,
yes, sir.
Yes, the resource persons would want to talk to you.
Okay.
Mr. Theophilus, can you please confirm if these grants are being paraded as CBN grants?
No, ma. No.
Okay.
No.
Okay, so in that case, we don't have any power. We can't influence that because it's not CBN grant, but we also mentioned that we don't do CBN grants. If it was that it was being paraded as CBN grant, then you can report that to the Consumer Protection Department and we'll take it up. But because it's not being paraded as CBN grant, we don't have any influence over that. But when you get the material, you would see that we do not do any grants. The only grant that we do so far is the Healthcare Sector Research and Development Intervention Grant Scheme. And that was introduced because of the policy of 2020, just to fast track and speed up the research and development in the healthcare sector, because we're trying to develop a Nigerian vaccine and also to address the Lassa fever, just to get drugs and vaccines to address those two peculiar issues in 2020. So that's the only grant that we do. In terms of agricultural grants, there is none that is being offered by the Central Bank of Nigeria. All of our intervention funds are loans that need to be repaid back, because if you don't repay back, you are preventing the next person from getting access to these loans, because she said it's a secular motion, it's like a secular economy. Once you pay back, it enables us to give us the next person so the person can also do the activities and pay back. So I hope that answers your question. There's no CBN grant for agriculture. Everything is a loan that must be repaid, and it is accessed through the deposit money banks, any of them. There are 22 deposit money banks, from GTB to Union Bank to Wema to Providus, and even the non-interest financial institutions like Taj and Jais participate. You also have the microfinance banks, and you have the merchant banks, Rand Merchant Bank. They all participate in the CBN intervention schemes. We have the DFIs like Nexum, we have BOI, we have Bank of Agriculture, we have NESO. These are the participating financial institutions. Now, if you identify the CBN intervention scheme that you want to participate in Once you read the guidelines, it states how it can be accessed. So it will let you know if it can be accessed through Nexim, or if it can be accessed through the Deposit Money Bank, or if it must be accessed through Nestle Microfinance Bank. Everything is included in the respective guidelines.
Hello, Theophilus. Okay, I think Theophilus' question has been properly addressed. We'll take Tony. Tony, you are invited to unmute yourself.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, this is Tony. My name is Tony Silva. And I've tried sending my mail also along with my attendance. All right, what I want to point out is this. There are observations I've observed that when the moment some of these online platforms, the moment you fill in your BVN and relevant information, the entire system locks you out in the process. And what I want to confirm from the CBN is this. You do go on to verify those people that have applied, those that failed in the process of application. Reason being that in this process, for example, I saw one, and I don't know if it would be wrong for me to mention the institution name. After processing and in your process, the something failed. And a colleague had to tell me that what these people do is collect your data the moment they get your BVN, relevant information, they log you out, then some other people elsewhere use this your documents, this your information to access facilities on your behalf, and you don't have information about it. And in the long run, you begin to hear, CBN will be saying we have given 78 million people loan, we have given 30 million people loan. Then you begin to wonder, we people that are out there, where did they get this information from? And I was told these are some of the ways that the moment you have logged in, they have collected the relevant information, the entire system shuts you out of the system, and then your information is being used by someone else. So I don't know the checks and balances that CBN has put in place. That is one. Two, we have tried processing for a commodity company. They are into agriculture, into smart farms and the like, trying to see how they can access them, but it has proved so difficult for soya beans and for maize. So we don't know. I still think you people still have to do more, maybe put a better platform where people can access also online. Because all these organizations, the banks and all the rest, there are so much bottleneck and people suffer too much. And at the end of the day, nothing comes out. In fact, even including Bank of Industry, you walk out and do so much documentation and all the likes, and at the end of the day, nothing comes out of it. Please, I want you people to look at it. If there are other places that CBN can put a platform where people can report, make their complaints, or put online platform where people can also check in and make other information, I want you to look at that and do that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Tony. We'll allow the resource persons to respond to you now.
Thank you so much, Mr. Tony, for your comments. First of all, I just want to state expressly that no one can use your information to access a loan without your knowledge, because the loan is paid directly into your account. Now, I want to find out what intervention exactly were you trying to participate under, and the website through which you applied, was it verified? Was it a secured website? Is it Nestle Microfinance Bank? Because that is the managing agent for AXMIS and TCF. So I want to know what loan specifically you tried to access. But either ways, I would throw it over to our senior colleague, Mr. Benedict Agbo, to shed more light. Thank you.
Yeah, it's Nestle. It's Nestle. It's Nestle. Thank you.
Okay. Ms. Bondi, you are mute. Okay.
Please unmute Mr. Benedict Agbo. He would like to address the question asked.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Good afternoon once again. Yes, my colleague had already answered the first question, which is no one can access a loan facility on your behalf without your knowledge, because the loan, definitely, the money will be paid into your account and you'll be aware that a loan has been processed using your name. Again, the issue she raised in terms of the website or the address you use, we should be certain and sure that is nmfb.com/SME. It has to be that. If it's outside that, and we also try to make people understand that we always see that HTTPS to show that it's secure before you put in any information. Then finally, he mentioned the issue of having a place where you can report your complaints. Apart from having branches all over, we have development finance offices in all CBN branches nationwide. If you don't want to access the bank, you can easily send any complaint to CPD, that's Consumer Protection Department, cpd@cbn.gov.ng. Whatever department in the CBN that needs to address that question, it will be channeled to that department to address it, and CPD will definitely give you a response. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We're gradually winding down. We'll take the very last question from Osandu Opai. Osandu, we're inviting you now. We see you have been up for quite some time. We'll take the very last question from you. Osandu, please unmute yourself.
Thank you, sir. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Yes, I had raised a question on the through the chat. It's about one of your resource persons spoke about the problem of challenge of power. And my question is, how is CBN intervening in the provision of power, which is critical and central to economic activities? Because all of the assistance in question would have to boil down to helping people, and many people are battling with power. In fact, at a point when Bondi Bilala was speaking, I listened all through, but when Dagogo started, my phone went down and I had to look for power bank to get back to the meeting. So the issue of power, how are you addressing it? And then secondly, I think it was in the beginning of last year, there was this forms that were circulated in the community where I lived, and they said it was anchor borrowers, that CBN was trying to assist people. And we opened bank accounts and filled forms, waited for the funds to come in to assist people, and eventually up to today, that one entered into voicemail. We never heard anything about it. So some of these programs that are often linked to CBN, is there a way you monitor them to make sure that they are actually actualized, or so that people don't just get disappointed? Because after filling those forms, nothing came out of them.
Thank you so much. Osandu, you raised a number of issues. But one of the issues you raised in respect of the CBN efforts in the power sector has actually been addressed in the presentation. Apparently, at the point your phone went down, that was when that aspect of the presentation was made. But I will allow the resource persons to respond to you more comprehensively now. Yeah, Ms. Bondi, you're on mute.
Thank you, Mr. Osondu, for your question. We hope that once the presentation is circulated, you'll be able to see what we have covered under power. However, when my colleague spoke, she talks about the various interventions that we have targeted at the power sector, such as the National Mass Metering Program, which has financed 865,956 meters. And so far, out of that number, 782 and 69 have been installed. That's what we've done so far for metering. We've financed 10 electric distribution companies, so DISCOs, and 1 million meters is the target. So, I mean, if you think about our target and what we've done so far, you would see that we're really right on track. It's 6.5% on track. Apart from that, too, we have the Power and Airline Intervention Facility, PAIF, which one of the impacts of that is that in the power sector, we've contributed 555 megawatts to the national grid. We constructed a 120 kilometer natural gas pipeline from Ipe Anang in Akwa Ibom to Mafunsing. I'm so sorry if you're from there, and I'm murdering your local government area in Cross River. So these are things that we've done. I mean, there are 51 power projects that we financed under just PAIF itself. We have the NBEDS Power Assurance Facility, which was to help cover the legacy debt of 2017, and there was an outstanding debt. And so just to make sure that there was still electricity supply to the average Nigerian, we introduced that facility, NBED PAF, and a lot of money has been disbursed in that regard. We've also done the solar connection facility. Solar connection facility is targeted in renewable energy, because I mean solar, and we have a target of 100,000 solar units, solar home systems. So far, I think we've installed, I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know that we're also doing, because not everybody is connected to the national grid. So what the solar connection is targeted at people in the rural areas that are off the grid. So you can see that in terms of power, we're doing a lot. We're doing payment assurance facility. We're targeting gas pipeline construction. We've targeted metering, which, I mean, we've done 865,000 out of a 1 million targets. We're doing solar as well. So in power, we've really done a number. But once you get the presentation, when you get the PDF form, you'll be able to see what we've done and the intervention, and you can read up on it on our website.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That was a very powerful presentation and a discussion session we have had in the past few hours. At this point, we would like to invite the Vice Chairman of the ICANN Nsukan District Society, Mr. Obinna Onyebuna, FCA, to render the vote of thanks to our resource persons and the Central Bank of Nigeria and the participants as well. Yeah.
Ms. Vice Chairman, I wanted to acknowledge the district coordinator acknowledge her presence during the meeting.
Yeah, good afternoon. Yeah, good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. It's been an interesting exposition so far. And we want to, on behalf of ICANN, Nsukka, and District Society, we want to say a big thank you to all the people that have contributed in one way or the other to make this a success. Starting from the Central Bank of Nigeria, we want to say thank you, sir, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, CON, the Governor, Central Bank of Nigeria. And thank you for making it, granting your approval for us to hold this webinar. I've been in collaboration with your Development and Finance Department. We want to also thank Mr. Philip Yela Yusuf, the Director of Development Finance Department. I want to say thank you, Dr. Olabintan Adebowale, Deputy Director, Head Strategy and Policy Department Unit. For the paper presenter, Ms. Bondi Lydia and Ms. Ayagogo Margaret.
We say a big thank you for that wonderful presentation you have made. We must say, from the feedback, you can see it's an interesting topic, and a lot of people are already putting in personal efforts for these programs to be accessed. We are hopeful that the feedback will also contribute in showing you guys the areas that may need one or two improvements, so that the target for these intervention programs will actually be reached. A lot of efforts are being frustrated or are not succeeding. So thank you, the participants, for all the feedback. It's contributory also. And we are glad you waited all this long to this point. We hope it's an impactful one for the members of ICANN and Sokan District Society. The chairman, ably led by Mrs. Deborah Ebos of FCA. We say a big thank you for this event. You can see it's like a bridge, bringing the targeted audience and the drivers of this program. It's an eye-opener to both sides. Thank you very much. The moderator, Mr. Dr. Jonathan, FCA, you have moderated very well, and we are grateful for your time. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. We hope we have contributed in adding value through this webinar, and we hope we'll do more so that these areas of need we have identified, we can work on them as we go forward. May God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Vice Chair, for that vote of thanks. We must also appreciate Mr. Benedict Abo, the Development Finance Department, for his input. Sir, we are very, very grateful. We also appreciate our senior colleague there, Dr. Musa, as well, who also made a lot of input in responding to some of the queries that have been raised. We just observed that the immediate past president of the Nigerian Economic Society, NES, Professor Sarah Anyang, also joined us in this webinar. Prof, we are grateful. We've seen your email, and definitely we'll get back to you with the material as requested. We also thank our district coordinator, Alhaja Titi Akibayo FCA. She has always been very supportive. We're very grateful you were able to join us. And other members of ICANN and Sokan Society who joined from various locations, Mrs. Amobi Blessing, Oluchi Ohebulam, Ndili Stephen. These are eminent members of our district and others. We appreciate your time and efforts. We cannot thank everybody enough. At this point, may I now invite one of our members here present, Mrs. Phil Emehelu, FCA, to render a closing prayer so that we can bring the session to a close. You can come over here. Unmute yourself.
Let's pray. In the name of the Father, Son of the Holy Spirit. Father, King of Glory, we worship you, Lord, for this wonderful webinar we have today. We thank you for the grace you have given to us. We thank you for the organizers of this webinar, Lord. We thank you for giving us the knowledge, Lord. We pray from today, the knowledge we gathered, Lord, will be useful in future. In the mighty name of Jesus, we have prayed. Amen. In the name of the Father, Son of the Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you so much. One more time, for members of these two who have participated in this webinar, Please use the chat room to give us your email, phone number, your membership number, your ICANN membership number. That will enable us to file back to the Institute in respect of your credit hour. Other people that will need the resource material, please use the chat room as well, and we'll be able to get back to you. So at this point, we're happy to declare the webinar closed, but the room will remain open for a while so that people can send in their chats. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yes. Okay, you can play the icon. Yes. Sharing. I saw your response long after that. I was saying, I repeat it again. Some people are still sending messages. Yeah, one more.
Amaka Alpha. Eh? Is your body?
Yeah.
Yeah.